I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus I was evil. Say things and break things and Jesus I was evil. I never shook baby.
Is it recording? Oh, there it is. Okay. Welcome everyone to episode 136.
7.
Damn it! I almost went off. All right, 137. Of the Reckless Musecast.
That's right.
I'm Joe Garza.
And I'm also Joe Garza too.
Psych. I'm Benraserhead D'Alessio. We're talking about two distinct pieces of art, a book and a movie.
Yeah.
One is a book that I read, and I told Joe, I'm like, hey, Joe, this book is good, and we should talk about it on the pod. And he said,
and I said, no.
Whatever you say, Ben.
Yeah.
And then I also watched Eraserhead recently for the first time by one of would you say he's your favorite director, David Lynch?
No, but he's definitely one of them for sure.
Definitely
Probably
up
top
there.
5. Yeah.
Top five boy.
Yeah.
Eraserhead. And we'll get to that. We're gonna get to that second.
Yep.
And we'll get into it. Anything you want to? Oh, and we're gonna remember. I'm actually gonna say this recording, and we're gonna remember to promote stuff in between because we go several episodes without saying anything about that. So, welcome to episode 137. We're gonna talk about The Wanting Seed. I have my copy right here. This is by Anthony Burgess, who is, even it says right here, author of A Clockwork Orange. That's what he's definitely the most famous for, which is fun. I think it's one of those things where he doesn't even like it all that much, or he said, I don't know what to make of that when artists do that, whether it's a writer or something that makes them a ton of money and makes them perhaps a household name. Clockwork Orange is a household name. I don't know if people know Anthony Burgess. Probably more people know Kubrick, who did the movie.
Yeah.
And then they kind of poo-poo it for whatever reason. I don't know what to make of that. Sometimes I don't like it. And I don't even quote me on if this is the case. I'm fairly certain, though, he's talked about how he doesn't like it. He doesn't like the messaging in it. He says it was taken wrong, et cetera, et cetera. Before I get into The Wanting Seed, did you know, though, something? You've seen A Clockwork Orange, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know the ending in it, how the classic ending, where one of my, honestly, I actually have a Clockwork Orange movie poster in my TV room, one of my favorite movies, and the final line is, "I was cured all right," by none other than McDowell.
Yep.
What's his first name? Malcolm McDowell. Malcolm McDowell. That is actually not the ending of the British book. Now, that is the ending of the American version of the book.
Yep.
But it's not the British. In the British version of the book, he just kind of matures and goes on to have a normal life and has a wife and kids, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
And the Americans were like, no, we don't like that at all. We want it to be a really much more sinister ending, and it's so good. And I think Burgess hated that, if I remember correctly. But don't quote me on any of that. We're going to talk about a different book, but actually came out the same year as A Clockwork Orange, which is pretty crazy. 1962. Same year as the book. The movie came out in, I think, 71. But 1962. He published both of these books. I think even he was a very prolific writer. Sometimes he said some books took him as little as 6 weeks to write.
Yeah.
I can't remember. This was one of them. But it came out in 1962, The Wanting Seed. And this is a dystopian book. But unlike, obviously, when you start reading dystopian books, you kind of start seeing the same threads throughout a lot of them. Brave New World, 1984. Those are probably the two most well-known. Of course, there's, what's the Iron? I said the Iron Maiden, The Handmaid's Tale. The Handmaid's Tale. There's many. There's Six Harlots by Ben D'Alessio. I've written. So
X-Men: Days of Future Past. Yeah.
Is that a dystopian?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I don't really. I actually never even loved X-Men as a kid. I didn't.
Oh.
It was never my favorite. I'm sure I liked some of it sometimes, but I never like got real into X-Men. I think I like Cyclops, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I don't get it. What was
You're wearing
Cyclops?
glasses.
Oh, yeah. Was he like a smart mutant? Is that his thing?
Not
Like a
really, but he
physicist
was
or
a
something?
leader. He was more tactical. I could see you like him Daredevil more because, like you, he was
Isn't he a lawyer? Yeah.
lawyer, Catholic, and just like you, blind. So I think
Right.
So,
Right. He's Catholic. That's like a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, seriously.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
maybe I'll check out Daredevil.
Yeah, Daredevil's pretty cool.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're talking
Yeah.
dystopian.
Anyway, so so this book it's not very long. I read it pretty quickly. It is I think a really not just it's interesting for I know we were doing the math earlier, so this book is 62 years old.
As of this recording, because
Yeah.
the work could go to shit today, and then this won't get released until decades later from now.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is for posterity.
Yeah.
I'm reading this book, and this book had been on my list for a long time. I have another Burgess book on my list. How I buy books a lot of times, if I'm not really like I need to read this book, what I do is I go on randomizer.org or whatever, and I just put numbers. I put one, so pick a number between 0 and whatever the last book on my list is, and then I go one past that because I think it means in between. So let's say 1 to 117, 0 to 117. Whenever it comes up on, it'll give like 52. All right, I go look, what's 52 on my list, and I buy that book. I think that's how I did this. I can't remember, but I got it recently. I got it a couple months ago. I finally read it, and I'm reading this book, and I'm like, holy shit! Like I knew this was just a dystopian book. I knew it was Burgess, but it is so many things in this book, and like a good dystopian book, it's taking a kernel of truth and stretching it to an extreme. That's what makes good dystopia, whether that's Soylent Green, which is a Malthusian. That's a new term I learned. Malthusian, I think I'm pronouncing that right, which is about overpopulation. Malthusian fiction. And that's what this book is about. The premise of this book is overpopulation. It's in the UK. It's in quote unquote London, but London's gigantic. It's like a mega city, probably bigger than a modern day Tokyo, which is in itself gigantic. If you ever like put Tokyo on a map of England, it takes up like a huge part of it. That's how big Tokyo is. Right. It's about overpopulation, but how the government and people deal with the overpopulation is what made me think so much about this book. Is in today's culture, it's very weird because we're having both an overpopulation problem, but then also a depopulation problem. Because I guess it's how you look at it. Some countries, China, a lot of Asian countries are actually cratering in population. That's a mix of things. Like South Korea and Japan have a different issue than China, even though they're both losing population, where countries like in Central Africa and other parts of Asia and South America are actually skyrocketing in population. This is more of the worst of all worlds, where there are strict. So let me just get into some of the why I found this book so interesting and why I think it pertains so well to today. Like, so child limits is the main part. I think, Joe, we grew up in the 90s. I remember learning about China. Like the one child policy was like such a big part, and all the rumors, and maybe some of them were true, about like people killing girls because they wanted boys, and just the government cracking down on people. And that's more than evident here. So like in the very beginning of this book, it really follows three characters. As the book goes on, it really focuses much more on one than the other two. One takes like a total backseat, and then the other is kind of in the middle. But the female character, right away, her child died, and the doctor like couldn't really give a shit less. If anything, the doctor's talking about how the child's going to be used for fertilizer, and he's saying things like that's one less mouth to feed, and he's almost celebrating it, and it'll be for the greater good. And of course, this is a mother, and in this culture, in this society, you don't just get one child, you get one birth. So he's done. Like, that's it. And what's funny here is when I thought about it, so abortions are encouraged, obviously, but
Right.
not for the same reasons that some people encourage them here. Some people here will encourage them because children are expensive and you're making minimum wage, or some people are. There are people this far to, I would say, the left, who are so concerned about the environment that they're not having children. And
Right.
what I always say, I don't really get the fights online. This is a sidebar. I don't really get the fights online about people don't want children, because there's nothing worse than a bad parent. So like, if someone doesn't, having a child is hard enough. If you don't want to have children, like, why do you care if someone doesn't want to have kids? I never understood that.
Right.
I mean, a lot of these people, I'm glad they're not breeding. So that's
Yeah.
So I'll stick to the child rearing part here. It's like, so it's one birth per family. And so this woman used hers. So she's done. And abortions are encouraged, but what's funny is that, unlike in some states here where getting an abortion is illegal, there getting pregnant is illegal. So people are getting abortions for different reasons.
Right.
It's kind of like they're getting the abortion because it's not that they don't want to have the kid, it's that they don't want to get arrested.
Right.
Which is kind of taking what we do and spinning on his head with maybe a twist there. That's something that really just came to me like as I was preparing for this episode. But it was very like that starts. And if you remember in the beginning of Brave New World, if anyone's read that, it's kind of the same thing where like sex is considered disgusting because people are just made in labs now. Yeah. And I think the younger generation, what's funny is, as much shit as older generations always give younger generations, Gen Z is like, they don't have sex, they don't smoke, they don't drink. Yeah. They're just like on TikTok all day. Yep. And it's funny that it's like, this is the first generation that's kind of become less hedonistic, it feels like, in American culture. And they're more hedonistic in other ways. Sure. So children are looked down upon. In fact, heterosexuality, so there's another part. Heterosexuality is not illegal, but it's definitely frowned upon. So one of the main characters in this, I know, here we go. So one of the main characters in this, his name is Derek. So there's a love triangle in this story. I'm going to try not give stuff away. So love triangle, one person's name is Tristram. I think I'm saying that right. It's like Tristram, but I'm probably Tristram, some stupid British name. And then Derek, and the woman's name I'm blanking on. It's like a double name. Beatrice Joanna. That's it. Beatrice Joanna. So Derek and Tristram are brothers. Derek is a closeted heterosexual. So I swear to God, he's pretends to be gay, homosexual, because it benefits his career. So he moves up the ranks because he's a homosexual. And you can see where I'm going with this in terms of certain types of identity politics. Actually, what used to be a hindrance to upward mobility in this country and in Western society at large is now a benefit in many circles, in many ways, and whether it's affirmative action or soft affirmative action, DEI, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So Derek is sleeping with Beatrice Joanna, who's married to Tristram. So Tristram's son is the one who is dead in the beginning, and then Beatrice Joanna is sleeping with, having an affair with his brother Derek, who's a closeted heterosexual, who then Beatrice Joanna gets pregnant with twins. And whose children are they? Well, I'll leave that for you to read about. But I thought that was so sticking with the homosexuality thing, there's groups of roving youth, strictly homosexual youth, men who are called the Gray Boys. And they're like a gay Gestapo. Like, I'm not even kidding. They're called the Gray Boys because they wear gray hats. Like those, not pork pie hats. What are those ones that like I use associate with like Ireland and shit? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Is
those
it
hats that, like,
not deer caps.
Like what hipsters wear, right?
Yeah.
Very like Brooklyn 2011.
Yeah.
Beards and arm tattoos and shit. Yeah. So they literally just beat up people. And
the Gestapo.
Honestly, yes, yes. I don't know why I didn't think of that. They're the Gestapo, and I'm not exaggerating here. This is in the book. They just kind of enforce the law in a way, but they're honestly just bullies. You can see the overlap there with the Clockwork Orange, where the same thing kind of goes on there, but it's gangs, like street gangs that aren't sanctioned. Where here they're like sanctioned street gangs, much more like, well, the Gestapo, or would it be the black shirts? the brown shirts in like fascist Italy. I think
Right.
the black shirts were the German part of it. If I'm getting my fascists correct.
Yeah.
So that's one thing too. So you could see where what's going on, I think, in a lot of Western societies today. And I watched a British book reviewer talk about this, where the police are gay. And if you look at some like London police departments, they have like pride flags painted on their cars. Yeah. And, you know, everything is pride this, pride that. And they're also like dancing and kind of like celebrating in the street. I'll get into what that turns into in a second, the next segment of this. But I thought they're like, I mean, that's just on the money,
right,
for me. Next is then religion. So what's going on in this book, which I've looked up a couple times, there's like 3 phases, and they're not, it's like the people kind of talk about them, but it's not like a date where like, okay, on this date, this phase starts. It's called like Pelagianum phase, the interphase, and then another phase. And it's like how the government reacts to everything. It's like they crack down super hard. Then there's like the interphase, and they realize they're bad, so they lighten up, and then that causes problems because there's like so much disorder. And then it's kind of like that cycle that we go through here. It's like you have you know, anarchism. I think like 2020, you saw a lot of that just like Strivons. And then what happened was there's a lot of crackdowns on that. And then some places go too far to the right on order. Not too far from me, but too far to the right on order, where then there's a backlash to that. And I think that's what he was getting at. I would have loved to see this book. What shocked me about this book, again, this was written in 1962. Came out in 1962. That means this is pre like the Vietnam era protests. This is pre-sexual revolution. Well, it's crazy how predictive that this book is. How like prescient that this book is. I would have loved to see this written in like 1972. Like if he rewrote this, or in 2022, if someone wrote this, maybe I did. But it's like the same. That it's so crazy to me how he just predicted the future in this way, and a lot of that is in retrospect, of course, like all dystopian fiction. How many times did 1994 get invoked? Today, it always will, by all sides too. Everyone always invokes it, but that's kind of the fun of, and that's the staying power of dystopian fiction, and why it's so important that it exists. So the next part is religion. Praying is illegal. Like obviously church is illegal, praying is illegal, the Bible's illegal, and even wine is illegal because of its association with religion. Then of course you have like kind of the underground church, so there's that cycle of it too. And I think a lot of people would argue in some places that religion is being you know, overtaken by, let's say, like social justice, or just by kind of rabid secularism. Well, of course, other people would say, no, religion is still extremely powerful in some states in this country, and it's actually encroaching on our individual freedoms. I think that's just the nature of America, and we're a very big, diverse state politically. But I thought that was obviously, you know, this is, so you could tell this is a very left-wing authoritarian government in this sort of dystopia, and where other, you know, books like the Handmaid's Tale would be like a very right-wing nationalist authoritarian, I would say, dystopia. The last part, so the next part is about food. So this I don't think is as close to where we are today.
Right.
There's a lot of the food in this is synthetic. It's literally called like something like the synthetic food, the Ministry of Synthetic Food or something like that. Alk is something they drink, ALC. It's like, it sounds like rock gut or like bullshit alcohol back in Prohibition days. Right. Basically everything kind of sucks in the society. So that you can kind of see that. You could argue like, yeah, a lot of our food is shitty and synthetic, but if anything, we've had a backlash to a lot of that. I would say maybe 15 years ago or so. If anything, organic has kind of taken over, non-GMO, free range, all that shit. Yeah, and I think that's good, honestly. Like I think there was a point where we ate complete garbage in this country, and that's why men live to 53. But so that I don't think is as you know, I thought if today, if anything, if I were writing the Malthusian fiction today, it would be everyone's eating bugs because that's
Right.
that I see it going.
Yeah, the World Economic Forum.
Yeah,
and
World Economic Forum, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, like they kind of tease it. Like they always put feelers out there. It's like some cultures, bugs are healthy. It's like, dude, I will never. There's nothing that will get me to join armed resistance than if we have to eat bugs. Like that'll be the first thing that'll get me to do it. You can take away a lot of my freedoms, but I'm not eating bugs. There's a lot of cannibalism in this book, and it's written really well. It's very interesting. It's not cannibalism as in Soylent Green, though. Can I spoil Soylent Green? Do people?
Yeah.
One of the most what I always say is I can't stand. What's that actor?
Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston. Yeah, I hate the end of Planet of the Apes. I think it's one of the most overacted scenes ever. But I love End of Soylent Green, where and I'm saying that because they're both Charlton Heston, and it's like a big final line. And the line is Soylent Green is people. So spoiler alert, they're eating people in Soylent Green. That's more of like they're making chips out of people, like nutrition things. Like here they eat something called NUT, and it stands for like nutrition unit or something.
Right.
So that's not going on here. This is just more like Saturnalian revelry, eating people, big. It's the opposite. It's the rebellion against the state, and it goes so far because people are starving to death. Right. That they're just killing people and eating them in big spit roasts and just like parties in the street, and it's kind of normalized in some ways, and that also speaks to a certain illness. But so that I don't think it was as prescient as these other issues, but also it's very funny, like the way he describes it. He's really good at describing all that. It's like Thomas Wharton was a businessman who got clobbered over the head and squared and quartered and roasted in a thick fat, like all that stuff, and it's very very, very well described. So I think for those, and there's a lot of other good parts of this book too. I think it loses you a little. Oh, last part. Sorry. Then I'll wrap this up. Last part. Why I think this book is really interesting. Let me. Actually, I took the time to find some quotes. I just like this quote. I don't know if there's anything I was talking about, but he goes, I think his name's Shawnee. Shawnee's sane enough and sensible enough. He may be sane, but sanity is a handicap and a liability if you're living in a mad world. I was like, that one's very pithy. Let me see here. So, this is interesting. You can ascribe this to a certain issue that's going on in culture today, but I'll read the quote. For generations, people had lain on their backs in the darkness of their bedrooms, their eyes on the blue watery square on the ceiling. Mechanical stories about good people not having children and bad people having them. Homos in love with each other, origin-like heroes castrating themselves for the sake of global stability. Like there definitely is a contingent of soy boy beta cucks out there who are like chemically castrating themselves for global stability.
Yeah.
Then, okay, so the last part I want to get to is about war. Like 1984, there's just kind of war for war's sake. Probably one of the most defining characteristics of it. You remember the classic line, like we're at war with Eurasia. We've always been at war with Eurasia, and we hate East Asia, and East Asia is a friend. And then all of a sudden, it's like we're at war with East Asia. We've never been at war with Eurasia. Eurasia is a friend. I'm paraphrasing there, but that's the concept, right? So here, our character just kind of finds himself in a battlefield. He doesn't know what's going on. I won't spoil where they are, but it's just kind of like war to war. He's not giving any strike. He doesn't know who the enemy is. And I thought this part, again, remember, this book was written 62 years ago. So the context here is that he's in a war. He's in a trench, right? That's not really what goes on anymore. Actually, I don't know what's going on in Ukraine, but let me just read this quote. So the whole thing's a fake. Very shortly, this trench will blow up, and the blowing up will be done by remote control by some bloody big spider sitting at a base. Like, dude, that is drone warfare.
Yep.
Like he's describing drone warfare 62 years ago in a way. Like that is so crazy to me.
Yeah.
And lastly, here, this is a good one to end on. So, I mean, if this doesn't speak to, I think this is more American. Remember, this is British, but I think this speaks much more to the American military industrial complex. This is no longer a police state. There are no spies. There's no censorship. I'll tell the bloody truth. I'll get the government to act. The major was unperturbed. He stroked his nose in slow rhythm. Despite its name, he said, the War Department is not really a branch of government at all. It's a corporation. The term War Department is merely a link with the past. Yes. So, I mean, that's obviously, I'm referring to our industrial complex of war contractors who obviously have an incentive for us to either get involved in conflicts all over the world or at least fund them.
Yep.
For no other reason but to make money, which is sick and twisted, and I hate it. So if that didn't interest you enough, this book's not for you, but it's really interesting. It's I'm a big fan of Burgess's writing, and I highly recommend it.
And he was British too. Yes.
Yeah, he was British.
Well, don't let that deter you. He's written some fine works.
Dude, I like British writers.
Yeah, me too. But just in case we have any Anglophobes out there.
No, we just have Austrophobes or.
Nice. Yeah, I've been meaning to get into some more books, so maybe I'll get into that one.
I highly recommend it, dude. It is really good. I would even read. I've read Clockwork Orange a couple times, and I've seen the movie several times. So I have a very, very old copy. It's honestly like falling apart. I need to get a new one, but I kind of like it.
How does it smell?
Old.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna check. I don't think it's an original printing, but it's old as fuck. Like the art is really cool on it. I'll grab it for the next episode.
Yeah, that'd be cool, man.
Yeah, it's kind of falling apart though.
Yeah. Cool. Well, maybe we can try to get Burgess on our show at some point. I know he's dead, but we can. We should still try. I have a Ouija board.
What did he die in, like the 90s?
Probably.
80s?
Did I tell you I found a Ouija board in the street?
Yeah, put that shit back.
Yeah, and it was all set up and everything too.
Put that back. Did you actually find one in the street?
I did.
Dude,
dead serious.
Fucking Los Angeles is so weird. Yeah,
I found some cool stuff in the street, man. I found a Ouija board. I found a lighter that still works. I still use it.
You put that shit back where you found it. You don't take a Ouija board in the street.
Especially it was set up too.
Where? What street? Where?
It was in Highland Park.
Now. Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
I bet you was just some like hipster doofuses doing the Ouija board like at night.
Yeah.
I like that. No. So, like, what was that bar we went to? Like the Chicano/goth bar.
Oh yeah. La Cuevita, yeah.
La Cuevecita, yeah. Little cave. Oh yeah. Burgess died in 93.
Yeah. Well, I've got my ways.
You can bring him back.
Yeah, I'll bring him back. No, so it's actually at the venue that I work at. So it's not my prop anymore.
You brought it to your venue?
Yeah. So it's funny. I actually set up in the backyard on the table that we have.
Children go there?
Sometimes, but it's upstairs, so they don't really go up there, dude. I mean, like, here's the thing, like, this is like a Ouija board that somebody bought from Target. It's not like an old dusty thing. It's like, it's Milton Bradley. Like, it's not haunted.
But Milton Bradley makes a Ouija board.
Milton Bradley, or it's like Mattel or some some toy company. This is not some like ancient antique. It was like a modern, some thing that somebody bought it from Target.
They get you. That's how they get you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those witches and soothsayers, they're really good at mimicking modern merchandise, aren't they?
And suspecting.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's not my problem. It's at the venue. So, but I did set it up as a little bit of a prank. I set it up in the backyard on the table that we have, and then I go out there, and my roommate, he's smoking a cigarette, and he goes, "Dude, what the fuck is that thing doing in our backyard? Get that shit out of here!"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, I found it in the street." And he goes, "Yeah, get it out, get rid of it, go."
Yes, that's the normal reaction to have.
I told my boss about it, and she goes, "Ew!" And then so I'm messaging her this like in the work thing that we have. I said, "Hey, I found the Ouija board in the street. You want it?" And she goes, "Ew!" And then 30 seconds later, "Yeah, bring it." So yeah, it's got a home.
All right. Well, Well, we'll make a list of people we can connect with.
Yeah. You know who is still alive is David Lynch. He's not dead at all.
He's old.
Yeah, he's old. He's old as hell.
Does he live in LA?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Mulholland Drive, man.
Well, he actually lives on Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
Wait, he made that movie, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
and they even shot. I don't think they shot anything at his house for Mulholland Drive, but for Lost Highway, they actually shot at his house.
He's 78. Okay.
Yeah, he's old enough to run for president. So.
Right.
And actually,
I love the tweets that are like Biden 2028. Dude, I want to see his Dune. I've never seen it.
Yeah, neither have I. I heard it's pretty nuts. I heard it's bad, but it's also very interesting. Yeah. Did you ever see the documentary about the other Dune that was almost made in the 70s?
No, we've talked about it. Who made that? Some guy with a crazy name?
Yeah, he's like he was raised in Mexico, but I don't think he's actually Mexican, but he's got a Mexican accent.
What other Dune? I thought it was like an Armenian name.
Jodorowsky. It's Alejandro Jodorowsky.
Yeah, Alejandro. That's like Argentina.
I know.
It's like Alejandro Kepferberger.
Yeah, exactly. So he was born to Jewish Ukrainian parents in Chile. And then at some point in the coastal town of Tocopilla, Chile.
There's a lot of Germans in Chile, actually.
Right.
A lot of, yeah.
And his father, Jodorowsky Grossman, was a merchant. Anyway, so he's got a crazy background. But anyway, so he tried to make a Dune film in the 1970s, and it would have been wild because it was going to have Orson Welles. Pink Floyd was going to do the soundtrack. But it was going to have rock stars and famous people and washed up people who were once famous. It's just like this crazy. And then like the art that he had, like he commissioned art from like people who were doing like sci-fi novels back in the 60s and 70s. So just like really wild, very
psychedelic novel cover art.
Yeah,
dude, that rules. I want this. This is one of those things I'm like, I wish this happened.
Yeah. And so exactly, and it's just crazy that everything just fell apart. But there are so many people said yes to it. Everyone was like, "Yeah, just let me know the time and place." And all. Oh, and then Mick Jagger was going to play the main kid.
Wait, is this one was Sting in David Lynch's?
Yeah.
Okay, he was in it. Okay, this wasn't the one where Yeah, and Mick Jagger was going to play Paul Atreides.
Yeah.
That no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's a part in the documentary which I highly recommend. It's called Jodorowsky's Dune, where
that's a documentary.
Yeah. So 10 years later, David Lynch makes it, and then so Jodorowsky goes to see the movie, and he goes, and it was a piece of shit. But and I was happy. I wasn't happy because I love David Lynch. I knew that it was a piece of shit. I was happy because it was a piece of shit because I knew it wasn't his fault. It was the studio's fault that kept getting involved. And right. David Lynch had confirmed the exact same thing. It's like he had these grand plans, but the studio was clamping down on creative freedom and stuff. I like
the title. Is it the greatest movie never made? Is that what this says?
I don't think so. Is that the tagline? Maybe.
Yeah, it's a tagline.
Yeah,
Jodorowsky's Dune.
Yeah, I highly recommend. I think it's on Amazon Prime.
Okay, sweet. I'm totally gonna watch this.
Yeah, check it out. It's
yeah, the greatest film ever made. I mean, that might just be like a YouTube clip or something,
right? But, yeah, you would love it, and just like the amount of talent involved. I don't want to give anything else away because there's pretty like, whoa, shit! Like they were gonna work on that film. So yeah, I'll save surprises for
Chilean and French avant-garde filmmaker.
Yeah, but mostly lived in Mexico.
Right. Oh, not Chile.
Nah,
right. He did spend a lot of time in Mexico.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it's like Louis C.K. His dad
half Mexican.
Half Mexican. Yeah, but his name, Louis C.K.'s name is not. Isn't those? You know how he goes by Louis C. K.
Yeah,
those aren't initials. His name is so like bizarrely Hungarian that like people will look at it and it would just be a nightmare to pronounce. So he changed it to like Louis C.K. It's like, I don't know what the term this be, but it's like phonetic initials for not initials. Like I don't know what you would call this, but I know that it's not it's not like he has a last name that begins with K.
Right. That's nuts. And you know another comedian who has an even crazier name?
Oh.
Maybe not as crazy, but it's so Theo Von. His real name is Theodore Capitani von Kernatowski III.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Why? He sounds like a wasp, but he's like trailer trash.
Yeah, I mean, he actually was from like shitty part of Louisiana.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I didn't know that.
That's how you name a kid.
Yeah.
But anyway, David Lynch. So Eraserhead.
Yeah,
So,
we're doing Eraserhead. I think we can do a David Lynch episode in the future. I need to see more Lynch.
Yeah.
Because I have not. I realize I've had Mulholland Drive and what's another one of his big ones? Not and Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet, yeah, that's a good one.
And another one, Lost Highway, on
Lost
my
Highway's
list
great.
for a while. So I saw Eraserhead. I actually got it from my library, and so I. I'm like, you know what? We've talked about Lynch. I have been watching Twin Peaks, but I just don't watch as much TV, especially I watch like a show with my fiance. That's kind of like my TV time. So for when it's me, I do movie time. I actually rented. I'm doing Mandy tonight. So we can talk about that later. Because we talked about that.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So Eraserhead. You want to attempt to describe it? Or
it's about this dude who looks like Kramer. He lives.
I called him Steve Brule. In my notes, I have Steve Brule hair.
Yeah, I can see that. This guy, his name is Henry Spencer. Like that's the character's name, and he's this weird, awkward guy who gets his girlfriend pregnant, and he lives like in a weird apartment by himself. But then there's like this hot, seductive babe who lives across the hall from him, and he gets it on with her, but then his girlfriend gets pregnant, and then she gives birth to like this weird mongoloid creature. There it is. So, I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff that happens, but
so it's definitely surreal. I saw some graph of like everything from like documentary at one end all the way to. Not surreal's almost at the other end, but something beyond surreal. I can't remember what it was, but this kind of fits like in the surreal area. I'm trying to be more open to films like this because I'm trying to go into it more of like what's the term? Abstract art. Yeah. And I have an appreciation for it. Sure. I think when it's done well, and of course that could be a razor's edge.
Yes.
What's done well and what's not. Eraserhead. So I was texting you while I was watching this.
Yeah.
It's something. I like it a lot.
Yep.
More because I think it looks really cool.
Yeah. So this movie came out in 77, I believe. Yeah.
77. Yeah.
And it's kind of timeless. It doesn't really look like a 70s movie. It just looks it's hard to pin down because everything is just so. All the sets are so. I'm sure I brought this up. Like there's this term, uncanny valley, which is when something looks so close to being real, but it's just slightly off. And for whatever reason, like human brains are not very good at handling ambiguity. It's either like this is a familiar situation or it's not familiar. But when something's like it's mostly familiar, but there's just a little bit off, for some reason, it just creates this really deep sense of discomfort. And David Lynch, like pretty much his entire body of work is strictly in the uncanny valley, where it's like same thing with Twin Peaks. It's like this is a regular little sitcom, little show, and everything's just slightly off, and everyone talks a little stilted. And there's
in Twin Peaks, what I constantly say to myself is I catch myself like once an episode going like, is he fucking with me?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's cool. Like Eraserhead, I don't want to go off into too many other David Lynch pieces, but Eraserhead is, I thought it was gonna be because if you look it up, they say body horror. There's definitely some of that, but I would say the kind takes a backseat to the surrealist, dreamlike elements to it. I love the main character. I keep forgetting what's the actor's name?
Jack Nance, which because he's also in Twin Peaks. He's a David Lynch regular.
Oh, who's he in Twin Peaks?
He plays that old guy who's got that Asian wife, I think.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I
like very like really fun, quirky guy. Like that's him.
Yeah, and dude, I didn't realize this is Sissy Spacek.
I don't think
Or
so.
no.
Was she in this movie?
Wait. Why did she pop up here? Starring Sean Black and White, starring Jack Nance.
Oh, looks like she was a producer.
Oh,
Like
okay.
she donated.
Okay,
donation
good.
for
So I was gonna
business.
say I didn't know that girl was Sissy Spacek, but it's not. It's
No.
Charlotte Stewart. Okay, good. Anyway, so let's actually give some background. I feel like we're just rambling here. So the main character lives in again like kind of uncanny valley like city-ish. It's not New York. It's not LA. It's not Chicago. It's just American industrial city. It's dark and damn. Why I said I think this movie looks great is because and by the way, it's in black and white if you didn't know. And it looks like I described it as like inky, like the black. It feels very inky and it sounds really cool. Like it's a very disturbing type movie. There's not a lot of dialogue at all, actually, when you look back on it.
And the dialogue that is there is odd and kind of stilted and sort of like sometimes a little poetic and sometimes just kind of like just really ambiguous.
Yeah, in the beginning, he's like doing a typical going to meet the parents of his girlfriend. I think they're just meeting. I mean, I just watched the movie a few days ago. But she's pregnant. But like the dad, they're just kind of like crazy shit's going on. Like it feels like there's a train right outside. Like things are shaking, but the dad's like sitting there smiling, and
mom's hysterical.
He's just like banging on stuff and fixing things. It's very not steampunk, but kind of that, just like gritty. There's a grittiness to it.
And there's a line during that scene, during the meeting of the parents scene, that really got to me, where the mom, she's like, "Yeah, you're gonna have that baby, and you two are gonna get married." And then the daughter goes, "But mom, they don't even know if it is a baby." I was like, "Holy shit! Like, what a disturbing thing to say." I'm pregnant with something. Like,
Well, I mean, if we get to that, the baby is. So I always thought Eraserhead was him. I didn't know what it meant. It was always a mystery to me. But it's not Jack or what's his name in this? Henry. It's not Henry. It's the baby, which is, how would you describe the baby?
It's almost kind of fish-like in a way. It's kind of
ET-like.
Kind
of ET, but like smoother. And
kind of alien looking.
Definitely alien looking.
It's actually a pretty good puppet. Like for a
really
low
good
movie, like it's like,
dude, so good.
Yeah, it's gross and disgusting looking.
Are great. It cries like a baby, like in the middle of the night. It drives her crazy, so she's kind of storms out, and so she can't handle it. So he kind of just becomes like a single father. Did she even come back? I don't remember. I mean, so of course this is a movie that's open to a lot of interpretation. What is this about? I listened to a reviewer talk about how this movie's been used both for and against abortion. I mean, that's art, so you can interpret it however you like. I mean, it's violent in a way, but also because you don't know exactly what's going on, like what's real and what's not, you're okay with it. I'll put it that way. This movie is from 1977, and it's popular in a certain, I think, cast of movie watchers.
But it was big in the sort of like midnight movie circuit.
Was it big? Okay. Okay. So probably a certain generation has seen a lot of it who are open. Like I can't imagine my parents have seen this movie, but maybe I'll ask them.
It was definitely one of those movies where it's like you would just like go, like you get high and then go out with your buddies to watch. Midnight screening of.
So
Lynch himself has said that, so Lynch is notorious for never talking about what his films are about, which I love.
Yeah, it's cool.
Like, there's that meme of him where he's like giving an interview, and then he's asked the question. Lynch says primary colors are bullshit, and then the interviewer says, "Can you elaborate on that?" And Lynch says, "No." But he's known for being very tight-lipped about his films. And he did say that this film was his most spiritual film. And his daughter has said, I believe it was his daughter. He's got a few kids, but I believe it was one of his daughters who said that she believes that the film was him exploring his anxieties about being a father, because she was born right around when the movie was being made. So it could be like him just kind of externalizing this, like my fears of being a father. What if my wife leaves me? What if it's what if there's something wrong with the child? And
I would say that's the most direct interpretation is fear of being a parent. You like your loss of control. There's the lack of communication, like your baby is crying, but you don't know why. You assume it's because they're hungry or whatever, but I'm not a parent, you're not a parent, so maybe this is something I would rewatch when I become a parent and have a different view of it.
Well, funny that you mentioned that, because so
you have a child?
Yeah. I've watched Eraserhead, I think 3 times, and each time I watch it, I love it more and more. So the third time I watched it with a friend of mine, and I won't say much about his situation, but for me, it was like by the time I had watched, I was like, dude, this movie is awesome. I don't know what it's about, but it's just cool. And so when I watched it with him, it really got to him, because his wife had just had a baby, like within the last year since we've seen it, and there was a little bit of infidelity ishness that had happened. So when he watched, he was just like, man, the movie really got to me, man. I was like, shit, I'm sorry, I didn't. I was just crazy.
End or her end?
I probably shouldn't say. But it was just
there's some high fidelity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's funny because to me, it's just like, this is just a wild, trippy movie. And for him, like, he just saw all kinds of meaning in it. He really got to him.
See, that's interesting. That's, I mean, that's a work of art doing its job. It's like 2 separate people watching the same movie at the same, like together, talking about it. And you're like, dude, this is sick. This is wild. He's like, this
holy
sucks.
shit. Exactly. Yeah. It really hit close to home for him.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what to make of. So if it was just that, I think it would be a more well-received movie. But there's a lot of other shit going on too. What is the woman in the radiator?
I'm so glad you brought that up.
I love her. So I sing that song. I've been singing the past couple of days. In heaven, everything is fine in heaven.
So I have a book called In Heaven, Everything is Fine, and it is fiction inspired by David Lynch. I haven't read it yet. I'm dying to get into it.
Wait, I don't get it. What do you mean fiction inspired by David Lynch?
It's just a bunch of short stories written by authors who were inspired by David Lynch.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I'll just read it back real quick. For over 35 years, David Lynch has remained one of the weirdest, most challenging and provocative filmmakers. From his early experimental films created as an art student in Philadelphia to his foray into digital film Inland Empire, Lynch's filmography is as diverse as it is influential, featuring Thomas Ligotti, who I love, John Skipp, David blah, blah, blah. In Heaven, Everything is Fine. Fiction inspired by David Lynch is a tribute to one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. So it's like sort of like bizarre, uncanny, not quite horror, but kind of surrealistic, disturbing short stories.
Is Inland Empire good?
I only watched the first 30 minutes of it. It's hard to watch in a way. I feel like I might have to watch more Lynch to really get into it. The reason why it's kind of hard to watch, 1, it's 3 hours long. 2, it was shot digitally, so it looks like a super low, like a digital camera from like the late 90s. And but it has big stars in it. It's got Laura Dern,
really,
a few other famous people, but like it's shot in like this really shitty, grainy way. So it's kind of goes into weird places. But I think I might have more patience for it now.
Right.
I think I was diving into it a little too soon in my foray into Lynch's work. But yeah, it's a 3 hour long, shitty looking movie. So
that's his last movie.
I think it was his last feature film. Yeah,
2006.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, all right. I mean, okay. Yeah. So wait. So what is that? What is that girl? I don't get it.
I don't know either. The lady in the radiator. I don't. That's just how she's referred to. But I don't know. I don't know if that's like, because there are a lot of like dream and fantasy sequences in this film too, or things where it's like this happened, but like in a fantastical way, like him hooking up with that chick. Like they have like a weird psychedelic sex scene. So it's like, did that actually happen? But he's just kind of exaggerating it in his own mind, like what happened, their little tryst,
right?
Because they're getting it on some kind of weird, like funky hot tub thing or something.
Right.
Yeah. but I don't know. I mean, he shot this movie in L.A. But you would not be able to tell.
No.
He just shot in like the weirdest, like shittiest, most industrial, worst industrial parts of
Yeah,
LA.
and I love that. Like, it has
Yeah.
such a good look to it. Which you're right that it is timeless.
Yeah, and like that high contrast, inky look. Like inky is a good way of describing it. It's just like this very bleak.
And that shot,
movie.
the famous shot, like the Eraserhead shot, is a classic in cinema. It's what, if you type it in and you click the Wikipedia page, it's what comes up.
Yeah,
I kind of did like the verbal meme, Leo DiCaprio in fuck
Django.
No, the Hollywood.
Oh,
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like pointing.
Oh,
at
yeah.
TV. I was like,
Yeah,
oh, it's that shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sperm imagery in this.
A lot of sperm imagery. Yep.
Like that lady, the lady in the radiator, like she's stepping on like the shower of sperm while she's doing her tap dance thing. Like she.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I didn't know what that was supposed to be. Maybe just adding kind of a catchy musical. What was cool was the DVD I rented. You know, the cover, of course, is just the classic Eraserhead. But on the back, instead of a bunch of like in Eraserhead and the David Lynch, it's nothing. It's just a picture of her in like a circle, and it says "In heaven, everything is fine."
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
Is that like the typical packaging for it? Do you know?
I don't know, because actually, and I have the Criterion Blu-ray of this as well.
Yeah.
So I'll have to check that out.
I thought that was really cool. I like shit like that where it's not a bunch of like Miramax, not this. It's just that one thing on the back. I'm like, okay, that's very interesting.
Real quick, so do you remember Battlefield Earth or whatever, the John Travolta?
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen it, but I know it's considered just an awful movie.
Yeah, it is really bad. And so there was so you know how a lot of movie posters will have like pull quotes from critics and say like Siskel and Ebert 2 thumbs up, and then Peter Travers Rolling Stone 4 out of 4 stars or whatever. Somebody took that the Battlefield Earth poster and they put just the negative reviews, but they like actual negative reviews. So like, what were they thinking? The New York Times.
That movie is. I mean, it's on like every. I actually watched a pretty good video, a YouTube video of. I'm not being mean here. I think it was a trans woman, but maybe not. I'm really not trying to be mean. I don't know, but anyway, it's not that's important. So it's a woman. I'll say it's a woman who watched every Razzie, like Razzie, I guess, winner. Would that be like worst picture?
Yeah.
From the beginning, I guess. And she talks about each one. And it was actually a very fun watch. And I'm pretty sure that was whatever that year's Razzie was. So, like there was one that like duck one where the duck is a detective and it's like really raunchy, and it's all like practical. Do you not know that? Oh man, I don't know. It's like everyone else is a normal human, but there's like a detective duck.
Howard the Duck?
Maybe. Let me see.
Because that came out in like '86. That was actually based on a Marvel comic. If it was Howard the
Duck movie. No, Howard the Duck. Yeah. This. I think this is it. Yeah.
That's actually Marvel Comics' first movie. That's the first, or at least the first movie based on a Marvel.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Why'd they go with that one? He's a superhero?
George Lucas produced it for some reason, and he lost a bunch of money. Actually, quick, a little bit of trivia about that. Howard the Duck, actually, so it was a huge financial disaster because it cost like $36 million, which is a lot back then, and it brought in like half that. And so George Lucas was a producer on that. And so because it fucked him up financially, he had to sell off a little computer graphics division at Lucasfilm that he was working on. And he sold it to Steve Jobs, who was a friend of his. Yeah. And then Steve Jobs turned that little company into Pixar. So
good. Steve Jobs.
We have Howard the Duck, like one of the worst movies ever made, to thank for Pixar. Well, but so getting back to Eraserhead though, so we've talked about like experimental and avant-garde and abstract film and stuff before, and so I think most notably with Beau is Afraid. So I was actually talking to a friend of mine who's really into film, and he kind of likes a lot of indie and sort of like boundary pushing stuff. And so we were talking kind of like what makes good surreal film, and and similar to us, he liked actually David Eraserhead is actually one of his favorite movies, and he thought Beau was Afraid was just okay. Where it's like it had some cool parts, but it was just too long and a little bit. And so I asked him. I was like, I have a similar view to you, view as you, but I'm curious though, like what makes good surreal film? And he said something which I thought was interesting, but we didn't really. We just the conversation just kind of trailed off. But he said, when the filmmaker believes in what they're doing, then you can actually pull off like good surrealism, which I think is a good answer. But it just wasn't enough for it. Like I said, we were just having drinks and we just kind of trailed off. I was like when I'm watching Eraserhead, I feel like David Lynch really believes in what he's doing. Like there's a reason for him, even if it's not like a logical reason, but maybe like a purely like instinctual reason. Whereas with Beau was Afraid, it feels a little too random. At least a lot of it felt a little too random. But at the same time, it's very subjective. Somebody could watch Beau was Afraid and be like, "Oh, I totally buy what he's doing."
Some people loved it.
Yeah, where some people can look at Eraserhead and be like, "No, this is just random nonsense."
I do like now. I'm thinking about. I did read or listen to. Maybe I read it. I can't remember, but someone said that he picked a random verse from the Bible. And that was a big inspiration, but he can't remember what verse it was.
David Lynch?
Yeah, David Lynch. And now that you're thinking about it, like, it's very supposed like heaven is a very religious concept, right?
Sure,
so maybe there is more here about religion than it really gives off. I think it is mostly about fears of parenthood, abandonment, miscommunication or not being able to communicate with your child, deformities, like just like otherness, like othering of people, and like that's your child. It's very it's also just like from a practical standpoint, it's a really cool practical effects movie.
Yes.
It's a delight to watch. And when you realize the low budget that they had, the blood, the noises, the kind of cutting, the baby, I guess, if you want to call it that, really, really like worth the watch, just if you're a practical effects horror like we are.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And so I actually found somebody on Reddit actually pulled this up. So they found a quote from David Lynch talking about the exact Bible thing that you're talking about. So here's Lynch. "I got out my Bible and I started reading. And one day I read a sentence and I closed the Bible because that was it. That was it. And then I saw the thing as a whole, and it fulfilled this vision for me 100%. I don't think I'll ever say what that sentence was." You dick. Yeah. Somebody found somebody like scrolled through the Bible and was looking for potential verses that might have been it. This person says, "This seemed plausible, but not quite right. When I read next Deuteronomy 24:16, I felt I may have found a winner. Parents," so this is from the Bible, "parents are not to be put to death for their children, nor children put to death for their parents. Each will die for their own sin." I don't know. Maybe it applies to Eraserhead. Maybe that was the thing that set off this train of thought for David Lynch. But I like that. I like that mystery of like,
I think what was good. It's retro. Like, I appreciate when someone famous like leaves some mystique for the rest of us. I think it makes it fun. Even if it has its own frustrations, but I think that makes it fun, and it gives you something to talk about and interpret.
With Lynch, I don't know if you noticed this when you rented on DVD or Blu-ray.
DVD, yeah.
It did not have chapters, huh? Like you couldn't like skip to scene 22.
Right.
So that's intentional on his part. He mandates that whenever his film is released on DVD or Blu-ray, that it does not have chapter selections, because he wants you to experience his films in one sitting.
Yeah.
So I like that, where it's almost like, I think he knows too that his films are not really meant to be watched for logical reasons. It's more like, I don't know, like just purely an emotional experience or an intuitive experience. So maybe that kind of tempers, like maybe that's why I have a little more patience for his films, where it's you have to be in the right mindset. Whereas other filmmakers, it doesn't quite work, where it's like I expect something a little more logical from you because of your past work, and now you're doing something that's not, and now that's kind of a jarring experience for me. So
Yeah, that every piece is, you know, sometimes if something's too straightforward, it's kind of boring. It's what's the point?
Yeah.
It's foreseeable. You know, outside of maybe it looks nice or some great acting or whatever, like that's not all that fun either. But if it's too abstract, it's like neorealism, right? I was just railing against that last episode, so I was more open to something more interpretive and surreal. But if it's too out there, if it's too just like, I hate the, you know, I feel like so many movies, so many times it's like, oh, they get high and it's just seeing things and random shit, and it's been done to death. It's kind of, even in Easy Rider, I don't love it. It's all right. It's fine. Just gets kind of, I like what I think to be more realistic depictions of altered states, I should say. And I can tell you I've experienced some of them, and it's not like what you see in movies.
Right.
And there are ways to, man, I've seen some pretty freaky shit. But there are ways to do that. And basically what I'm saying is, you know, the human mind is a beautiful, insane, wonderful thing. And I applaud, whether it's abstract artists or, you know, abstract filmmakers, surreal filmmakers, because when it's done right, it is timeless. Like human emotions haven't changed all that much. Like we still, the uncanny valley, like I think there's a reason why there's the fear of snakes and spiders.
Yes,
they're weird. It's a creepy thing. It's not what we're used to. Like we're used to things with legs, and like, and that goes back millennia, more than that, many millennia. And so when it's done right, it's something that can be enjoyed. I mean, Eraserhead is something that people can watch in 100 years.
Yep.
So we forgot to do the thing I said in the beginning we were going to do, which is promote our other whatnot. So in the show notes, you can find links to everything. Do you want to add anything about Eraserhead?
No, except I think it's a cool movie, and like all of Lynch's works, I find that I enjoy them more and more the more I watch them.
I think if you listen to this podcast and you follow kind of what we watch and talk on most of the time, then you should just watch Eraserhead. Like,
hell yeah, check it out.
Even if you don't like it, it's just something. It's not even that long, I don't think. Is it even like an hour and a half, maybe, around that?
Yeah, it's also just unbelievably original. Like it's just super unique. It's hard to compare it to too many other things.
Yeah, it's a classic for a reason. So yeah, we have a Patreon, different tiers. Check out our merch. You can buy us a beer at the PayPal. You can check out our Medium pages. You can submit to our Medium page, the Reckless Muse, which is where this podcast gets its name.
And follow us on Instagram, Twitter.
Most active on Twitter. What's Twitter? We're keeping it as Twitter.
All right, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram,
and share us if you do like it. Share it, post it, give us stars, subscribe, leave comments, etc.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, and stay reckless.
Fight the creds.